Hello and welcome to Behind the Bar of A Pint of Cthulhu. Today we have Jack from... Now you're going to have to tell me how to say this properly, but I always said it's Caesar.
Caesar's correct, yeah. Like the Emperor or the Palace. Or the salad.
Nice one. And you are the rules editor and one of the writers for Doomsong, yes?
Yes, I'm the games guy.
The games guy.
Although that we do always sort of advertise as that. I do the gamesy bit, Chris does the artsy bit, and Morgan does the writing-y bit. But when you're all sort of in the same office, there's definitely a lot of bleed over from all sections. So I will say, essentially, I didn't do all of the game design. I just did the bits that you like. Anything you don't like will be Chris and Morgan.
Blame it on them.
Exactly.
Fair play. Well, we'll start off with the first question like we always do. What would you say if you were handed a pint of Cthulhu? What would be in the drink?
Oh. I think it would be truly bottomless. Which you would think would be excellent at first. You think, oh, a bottomless drink, that's nice. But the bottomlessness nature of it would send you slowly mad. Whatever it was filled with would just never drain, and though you'd spend year upon year trying to investigate this drink, trying to find out what could possibly be at the bottom, what kind of secrets could be concealed within such a tankard, it would elude you, and you would die a broken shell of a human being.
I think that's an excellent answer.
That's dark as all hell.
It's excellent.
I love it.
It's great.
I mean, that's the first time we've ever had someone not say a drink, but give a description of pure horror.
You've got Lovecraft is all about not describing shit, right?
True.
That's his vibe.
Strength for the low price of your entire soul.
Yeah,
Love it.
but it would have a little umbrella in it.
Aw.
Yeah.
With little squids printed on it and floral
Yeah.
around them.
Oh, now I want to get those.
I've always loved the those little umbrellas that actually work. You know, they go up and down in the drink.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, little cocktail ones.
So they make fantastic little scenery for miniatures as well. You've got
That
a
they
little
do.
douche scene.
That they do.
Right, so how about you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah. I am Jack Caesar, part of Caesar Inc. We are a new company, or an old company, depending on which way you slice it. So, essentially, we've sort of been freelancing, doing game design and illustration and writing for various other companies in the TTRPG, board gaming, miniature games space for 10 years, sort of on and off. We've worked sort of full-time jobs in the industry around that and done sort of bits and bobs in and around. But our sort of freelancing name has always been Caesar Inc. In the last 6 months, we've actually dived into creating Caesar Inc. as a company, a real company that makes real products. And our first product in that company is Doomsong. Lord have mercy upon us. A TTRPG, horror, roleplay, macabre. So, yeah, my role in that, as we sort of mentioned a little bit earlier, is the game design-y bit. So, I've always been fascinated with how sort of theme and mechanics can meld together to create sort of a unique type of story, and that's essentially what my role is. It's sort of gluing together the theme and the mechanics to allow players to basically explore the world that we are presenting in a way that sort of fits that world and creates a story that we want to tell.
That was such a good answer. The fireworks outside started going off.
True celebration.
Fantastic. I set those up beforehand.
So, it'd be kind of scary if you knew where I lived.
We always know.
I actually just set up fireworks all across the country. It was easier, yeah.
Miniature recreation of the Blitz. All for you, Matt.
Yay! So, what inspired you, Jack, to start writing RPGs in the first place? What was your kind of start point?
So, Chris and I, so that's my brother, one of the other members of Caesar Inc., we have played role-playing games since as long as we can remember. But I honestly never actually, and this is such a sort of full of yourself game designery thing, but like we never played a real role-playing game as in a proper published one. We'd heard of them, and I think we'd sort of played bits and pieces of them with friends, but we'd never actually sort of played by a rulebook until, for me, pretty much until I went to university. But we've been playing and sort of making our own systems and stuff since we were growing up, and so it's always been a part of our hobby and our world. Is not only the sort of the playing of role-playing games, but the creation, because that's always been a really fascinating thing for me. We basically, a lot of it would be very freeform, so it'd be, this is the story, and when sort of a combat or an important thing turns up, we would often create sort of mechanics on the fly and then try and stay with them sort of future up that like down the line. I have very fond memories of those games, and I remember them being all very mechanically sound and working completely, but I fully believe that they only worked inside our minds, really.
Fair enough. So, what was the first TTRPG you tried? Pathfinder, D&D?
So the first real RPG designed by someone that wasn't us, the ones that are sold for money, would have been. I think technically it was someone's mash sort of hack up of Pathfinder to run a Charles Xavier X-Men.
X-Men, yeah.
Sort of adventure in a sort of one-shotty couple of sessionsy thing at a thing at university. But for a lot of those early years, Pathfinder first edition, some D&D 3.5, which are very similar in scope, and then a smattering of sort of Savage Worlds and other little bits and pieces.
Fair enough.
So, going on to the Doomsong topic. It's just bloody cold, man. I can't shift it. What are the core mechanics or system that you have created for your game?
So, the sort of core resolution system is so it's fairly simple in that the GM basically picks the difficulty for a task, then the player tries to basically get away with whatever they can and says, I have this trait and this trait and this trait, are those going to help? Traits are essentially very loose descriptive things about your character, so your character might be burly, or they might be literate, or they might be sharp-eyed or something. And so basically the player will say, I'm burly, is that going to help out with this check? And if it's something to do with lifting something or doing something that requires sort of physical strength, then yes, of course it'll help. There are other sort of bonuses that are added in for allies and having the right gear and that sort of thing. And then you roll a single d6 if you are sort of making the check standard, as you're not under any particular time pressure, but you also don't have oodles of time, and sort of it's a check you can retake and that sort of thing. Focused or hasty, which are the opposite of those. So focused is you have your time to take the check sort of however you like, and hasty is you are rushed in some way or suffering some disadvantage. Speaking of disadvantage, that basically works like the advantage system in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, in that if you're focused, you're rolling 2 dice and taking the highest. If you're hasty, you're rolling 2 dice and taking the lowest. And if you're standard, then you're just rolling 1 die. You add your modifier that you worked out before, and you will either be equal to, above, or below the difficulty of the check. If you're above, you succeeded. Excellent. If you are equal, then you succeeded, but at some cost. So the tool you're using breaks. Maybe you take a bit of damage. Maybe some enemies nearby sort of notice your location.
Fair enough.
If you roll below the thing, then you fail with a cost, and so you didn't manage to do what you wanted, and you also get a bad thing happen. At the very end of that, so after you've sort of found out what your result could have been, it's kind of like the multi-hole problem. Once you find out what your problem could have been, you get the chance to flip the Doom coin, which is a tool in the game that basically it's a coin, heads or tails. If you flip heads, then your result gets better, maybe even a critical success. And if you flip tails, your result gets worse, maybe even a critical fail. And the idea behind that is it's a little interesting way of basically ensuring the worst failures are not just you rolled a 1, that you rolled a 1 and then you were greedy, you tried to push it, you tried to flip this coin. And so when you die, which is often the result of a critical fail, or a spiraling result of a critical fail, then you kind of have no one to blame but your own hubris. So,
Jay, I see that killing you very quickly. So.
Hey, I haven't rolled the Doom coin once. I have been very well behaved for that.
And maybe that's the reason you survived.
I do like how it still leaves some stuff to chance. What you roll does matter, but at the end of the day, you dig your own grave with the Doom coin.
Yeah, and it's basically, and different GMs are definitely different. But for me, I find a lot of GMs need sort of prodding towards being vicious, being cruel.
Matt does not need that. Do not give Matt prodding to be cruel.
So
no, I don't need any encouragement. Neither does Toucan, to be honest.
Excellent. But this sort of does give players or GMs who sort of would maybe try and err on being kind. It's this like, no, you don't get to be, because they've flipped the coin. They've made the choice. And you have to not only think of something bad for a cost, but now you have to think of something worse than that for a critical fail. It sort of has that building tension, building consequences.
Fair enough. It is a very unique way of doing things. Speaking of unique things, Doomsong's character creation is very interesting. It kind of reminds me of old Choose Your Own Adventure books. How did you come up with it?
So we were kind of inspired by Traveller, which is a role-playing game where it has a fairly similar character creation system. It's sort of less path-based like ours, so ours is very much sort of, do you choose option A, B, or C? Traveller is much more, do you choose option A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or do you stay in this current role of this and that and the other? And so we sort of tried to pare it down, so there's sort of more choices in a row, but they're generally between 1 and 2. And the reason we sort of went down that route is because we were sort of shopping around for a way to solve the problem in horror role-playing games with character creation, where we wanted something lethal, we wanted something where you could, die at the flip of a Doom coin. And there's sort of 2 ways to go about character creation for that kind of game, because in horror, you want to love your character, you want to care whether they die. And so if you have a character creation that's quite intricate, quite sort of trying to pull at the heartstrings, make you think about your character's wants and needs and this, that and the other, then what you can end up with is quite a long and protracted character creation that's asking quite a lot of sort of mental load from the player, which is great because at the end they end up with something they care about, but they've just spent an hour doing that, which means that it's a much bigger problem they die in an hour. So, you're spending half of your life making characters. The other sort of way of doing it is making a very simple character creation, which is just choose 6 stats, go, you're done. Name your fighter if you get to 2nd level. And so the problem with that is you end up with very disposable characters that you don't have any connection to. So the sort of choose your own adventure path system for creating characters was a way of trying to have our cake and eat it. Basically, it's very quick. Once you've sort of grokked the system, it takes 10 minutes to make a character, but your character has a full story and a history and a life and wants and needs, and it's so fun watching people make characters in that system, and we're really excited to share the sort of the full 90 path system, basically, because you end up with this, you watch people sort of making these connections and these cogs and going, what would I do? I'd become a sailor, or I'd go down this, and and sort of coming out the other end and going, I was a bit of a scumbag, wasn't I, or something like that.
That should be our next party name, Matt. Scumbag Squad.
A bit of a scumbag.
I think that should be all of our party names then, if you're going down that route.
It's a common theme.
Running through that character creation a few times now, it is very easy to get a handle on. It's really quite well done. I must applaud you on that one.
Oh, excellent. The biggest problem we have with it, which is completely solved, but with the end one, is that at the moment in that sort of demo version, you do often end up with the similar routes through that creation, and we're really excited about because that completely disappears once every table is 6 different options. So that's
really fair,
that
especially
really
if it's a
out.
demo.
Oh.
You can't expect it to be massive. For the demo, it is huge.
The amount of things we had to cut out and cut our darlings and try and get this thing down to a svelte 120 pages.
Yeah, just 120.
Just a 120. It's just the same size as some other role-playing games.
So, working with the others in tow and creating all these strange, wonderful abilities and items and such, how do you go about your job in balancing that so it's fair, as it were, or unfair, depending on how you want to do it?
Yeah, so we've actually found, and we've made different games with different ethoses. We've made games for kids, for very sort of casual play, things that are a bit sort of grittier and crunchier, and sort of balance for us. It's sort of the 3 things you care about when making this sort of thing, where you've got balance, you've got theme, and you've got how fun the actual thing is to play. Balance is almost always kind of at the bottom of those 3, and accessibility as well. So the fun accessibility of the thing is to play. Then so balance is always, honestly, our least important pillar. It is something that we obviously try and think about, but sort of an ethos with Doomsong, especially in the character creation, is that it is not fair. You can go through that character creation, lose an arm, and have spent your whole life as a beggar, and had the world just kick you about, and then you come out the other end and you become a gravedigger, you join the guild, and you are a wreck, you are a husk. And you can have another character who was born privileged, joined a cult, became a witch, and now has superpowers. And so
living the high life.
It's very much it's very much about being unfair. But the important thing for us isn't balance, because balance can be very boring. A game where 2 players flip a coin and whoever flips the most heads wins. That's a very balanced game. It's just not fun. So what's more important than balance is making sure that everyone has options and things are cool and sort of interesting. So that's sort of where those abilities come in. The traits we try and make as flavourful as possible. Some are definitely more useful than others. Some are downright negative 90% of the time. Some are, really positive. Honestly, at the moment, Spry is definitely one that people can tweak into being, helpful for so many different tasks and so many different things. So essentially, there is this. So to actually sort of answer the question a bit more, a bit less evasively, there's sort of two main ways that we balance stuff. Is one in the numbers, in the maths. So there's the obvious, like if something's giving a +1 and something else is giving a +2, then the +2 is obviously better. So it needs to be harder to get or have some stipulation on it that makes it more difficult to use. And then there's the scientific. So that's the sort of the mathematical and the theory crafting. And that's the really, not easy, but that's the more common way. And that's how you'll see a lot of people focus on balance in like websites and forums and in the online space. You'll get tons of people sort of talking about whether this card or that card or this ability or that ability is better. And they're often talking in this nebulous open space, when the science is actually like the experimentation, playing in game, seeing, oh, is this thing actually overpowered, or is it, creating the experience that we want, and therefore it's working. There's kind of an interesting thing about the barbarian in Dungeons and Dragons, who's very powerful. That rage ability, where they take half damage from everything and they get bonuses to attack and stuff, kind of does often mean they're better than a fighter. Like they're just hardier and better at hitting, and this, that, and the other. The downside to that is quite often the kinds of players who want to play a barbarian get themselves killed. Like they rush into enemies. They play in a barbarian-y way, and that means that they die. And so actually the fact that their character has an ability that on paper is more powerful than the fighter's ability kind of balances itself. And we find that in Doomsong, quite often the more powerful a character is, the more cocky they get.
Oh, for sure.
That is a very quick way to die.
Definitely.
So there is one thing, because it was a demo, obviously our time playing the game has been incredibly fun, but also a little short. We haven't really had a look at how character progression is going to go. Whether it's going to have some sort of level up thing, much like D&D does and a lot of TTRPGs, or whether it's going to be something else.
Yeah, well, something else. So character progression is quite interesting in Doomsong. At the moment, there's some systems in work, and we are sort of playtesting some longer games to try and make sure that we get that, because that is quite a hard thing to playtest in the scientific way, because to work out if the system works, you've got to play a campaign, and so you're spending 10 or 20 hours into playing a few characters, getting them leveling up and stuff, whereas the character creation is something that's much easier to take 15 minutes. So we are still sort of in the testing and refining step of that stage, but it is looking very cool. And the way it works is essentially during downtime, which is what you call a sort of long rest in D&D. Once you've got your camp set up and you've got the bacon on the stove and got some time to sort of spend to yourself, you can take one of several downtime activities, and these are really quite broad things. One of the things that you can do is to train. You sort of pick what kind of thing you're trying to train. So are you dueling with one of your friends to try, or one of your party members to try and sort of get yourself better at combat, or are you poring over books and sort of learning about the world that you inhabit, or are you sort of sneaking through the forest and trying to get better at sort of skullduggerous activities? So you choose sort of one of these things, and you make a check. You roll on a table. If you fail at this check, then you gain the condition, I've been training this thing, which gives you a bonus the next time you try and train at that thing. But if you succeed at that check, then you'll get the chance to spend your XP on an ability, or a new trait, or sort of to make a trait you already have defining and better. And so what this means is that whilst character creation progression isn't random, because you always have the option of not spending your XP on that, so you can always wait until the thing you want turns up. But it is still about presenting opportunities, and it's this, okay, you're going to train this thing, here's a couple of options for what you can spend your XP on. You spend your XP, you gain a new ability, or you upgrade an ability you already had, and now your character is better, but it's not really something you could have planned for. So something that we wanted to avoid was the D&D thing of, at level 1, you might have planned your character out sort of 10 levels in advance. You go, okay, I'm going to take 5 levels in Fighter to get the extra attack, and then I'm going to dip into Barbarian for the Rage or something like that.
All those good min-maxers.
Exactly. And so we sort of want to throw a wrench into that. You can still think that way, but actually if you're waiting for this perfect skill that you want to come up in the training, then you might be waiting a few times. Each downtime is a full day. It's a fair amount of time, unless you're travelling sort of long distances across the map. So you sort of, and whilst you're trying to train this other thing, you're being given opportunities to upgrade your skills. And so it's a mix of, we're always trying to sort of walk the tightrope between random and too much choice. So we find that when players are given sort of a few cool options, then that breeds really interesting sort of choices, and sort of you start to think, oh, how will my character grow out of this, rather than sort of, especially with new players, going, okay, choose one of these 20 feats. Okay, well, I've got to read them all, and I've got to decide which one's better for my build, and see how they work together and stuff, whereas actually going, okay, roll a die. Okay, you've got to pick one of these 2 feats, one of these 2 things. Then that becomes a much sort of easier process, and it means that we can do really exciting things with how witches and stuff level up as well, because they don't just spend XP and get better at their abilities. They've got to basically do stuff for their god. They've got to, their gods have wants and needs, and those needs need to be fulfilled. Some of them are dark and insidious, some of them are downright charitable, but you have to appease your god rather than just training with a sharp stick. So it allows us to sort of inject a lot of flavour, not only into the character creation like we already have with the paths, but into the actual sort of progression as well.
So you previously touched on about the Doom coin and the critical fails, critical successes. How did you kind of come up with that idea? What was your your handle on the combat mechanics?
So essentially, the very early draft of what became Doomsong was called, its working title was "What If Everything Was Tables?" And essentially, it was this idea of actually creating a dynamic sort of table-based role-playing system, which you can see there's still a lot of tables in the game, and we've tried to make sure that all of the tables in the game are aiding play rather than sort of taking you out of the game and flipping through a book and finding page 41B to roll on table A and all of that stuff. But the original was sort of much closer to that, and we've created a much more sort of fluid system from that. And one of the ideas that came up was essentially this push your luck mechanic that we enjoy in games like Forbidden Lands has it, and it creates very tense situations. The earliest sort of version of it was so essentially you'd roll your d6 on a d6 table. So it used to be that all the tables were d6 tables, essentially 1 to 6, and your skills maybe gave you extra dice on that rather than sort of the modifier system that we're on now. You'd roll your dice, you'd get a result, and then you could push it. And we had a special die that had basically +1, +2, and +3 on it, -1, -2, and -3 on it. So a d6 with -3 to +3. And so to push it, you basically rolled that and added that or minus that from your result, which was mechanically fine. That mechanically did the trick and it did the job. And Chris basically just felt that it didn't bring you into the world, and so we sort of reworked it, and eventually we brought it down to this coin. So the sort of the intermediary stage was the coin, and you basically bid a number. You were like, I'm going to flip for 3. I'm going to flip the coin, and I'm choosing 3. So if it's heads, I get +3 to my roll, and if it's tails, I get -3. And then eventually we came to this system that we have now, which works much simpler, has a lot less maths in it, because that's actually a really difficult thing for me when I'm designing, because I've played a lot of role-playing games, and I do a lot of the sort of +3 to that, +2 because of that, and roll this, and sort of, especially when you're very familiar with a system, that stuff becomes much easier to do on the fly, and you sort of start to forget that for a lot of people this is their first game, and so you really have to get a handle on yourself, cut out 90% of what you're doing, make it simpler, always make it simpler, because the simpler it is, the more complexity that the players can end up sort of pushing into the game, and the less busy work they're doing trying to sort of solve a spreadsheet equation, whilst get actually down to playing with the numbers and actually going, I want a +2 for this reason, rather than just having to try and work out, wrestle with the system. The system should always be trying to get out of the way. So essentially, we always wanted to push a luck mechanic, and the coin became a way of simplifying, and now it's this razor's edge. Is it going to be great? Is it going to be bad? Which works really well for us.
We have some questions from our audience, the live audience. Kimber. For those listening to this, if you join our Discord and show up when we do interviews in the events channel, you get to add questions into the interviews sometimes. So first one is, obviously since the dead aren't moving on, undead are a thing. What other kinds of creatures might be encountered in Doomsong?
So there's kind of two camps of creatures. There's the horrible monsters that live in Panem, of which man is the workman. And then there are the horrible monsters that specifically live within Leaf, the Lost Kingdom of Leaf, the Plaguescape, which is where the first adventure is set. So there are a lot of very unique sort of monsters in Leaf that are sort of one-off, bespoke creatures of horror that you discover, you sort of work out what their deal is, you maybe die to them, and then work out how to either avoid, destroy, or just survive, whatever their deal is. One that we were messing around with the other day that I find quite interesting is the Natmara. So they are like wolf-like creatures with the heads of women, and how they...
Oh yes, on your live stream.
Yeah, we were talking a bit about that on the live stream. And essentially they eat dreams, so they will hunt the players, but they won't sort of approach them directly. They'll just stay nearby, wait till the party sleeps, and then eat their dreams. And that is detrimental. It means you can't sleep properly, you get bad conditions. If you already have those bad conditions, like tired and exhausted, then you gain traits and haunted, and you start losing your sort of mental traits. So you start losing like who you are, your humanity, and then if you have none of those left, you're just like this husk of who you are, and you still haven't dealt with them, then they just destroy your psyche. Then they come over and eat your flesh. Like once they've destroyed you utterly. And so the Natmara are like this persistent hunter that will take days to kill you. Like you can carry on your adventures, you can do other stuff, but they're just going to be there and they're just going to be waiting for you to sleep. And so, like dealing with them is this like you have to go out and find them. They're really interesting monster, but one that you guys might not have heard of.
This is just a side note, but I have noticed how much of Doomsong's creatures and gods and such, when we were talking with Morgan, are based on folklore, and I really like how thorough it gets with that. Because the Natmara, I believe, are Finnish folklore.
So Morgan is definitely the expert on that one.
I just think it's
so.
Cool.
The Plaguescape sort of came out of her mind. She is to blame for all of these horrible creatures. So yeah, she's just done so much work on the research, the studying, putting that doctorate to good use. I think so. One of the other creatures that I find quite interesting is the lace workers in general. So lace workers are very similar to the spiders of our world, except they are gigantic. And where we sort of split off from, giant spider is a classic monster. That's you find those at level 2 and slice them apart, and that's great. So we mess about with them in a few ways. The first is something that I actually try and do whenever I'm running spidery stuff in games, is their stats are actually terrible. Like, if you're up against a lace worker, you have a sword, you can see them and you've got the chance to attack them, you're probably going to win that fight. It's Bilbo versus the versus the spiders of Mirkwood. Spiders are not creatures of combat, they're not fighters, they're ambush hunters, so all of their abilities are to do with staying hidden, separating you, and basically working out a way of creating a puzzle out of the encounter. So the spiders in the Plaguescape don't weave webs, they weave bulge matter, which is like this flesh substance that is creeping its way through the Plaguescape. It's the body of Rot, one of the traitor gods. And so their sort of things, their webs are actually muscular. They pull and they move, and they'll sort of whip you out and whip you to someplace different, or they'll try and crush you and sort of actually like break your bones within the web. Then there's portal web lace workers who can actually sort of create webs that lead sort of interdimensionally through the world. So if you end up sort of trapped in one of their places, you're like 100 feet away. You're like, or half a mile, and suddenly you're dealing with these spiders alone and separated from your group. And then there are the razorweb spiders, razorback lace workers, who have basically monofilament webs that don't catch, they cut. So if you sort of move through their webs, you'll just it's like the scene in every late 90s sort of sci-fi thing where you're sort of going through the laser grid and then you fall to cubes, that sort of thing. So,
Resident Evil.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, this is sounding more and
it's
more horrifying.
It's sounding better and better. Get me in on this.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong, it's better, but it's like webs made of muscle.
I think it's Doom that has scenarios that look like that, and I love it. Yeah, ask him for 2 kinds of people. And oh yay, more please.
I'm just imagining it now, like a spiderweb in the corner of your room is made of muscle.
There's a particular way of depicting flesh in some older horror games where it looks kind of like, I don't want to say cheese, but like cheese pulled over stuff, but like gory. That's why I'm envisioning the whip. Speaking of horrors, there are a lot of quite horrible gods. They're not nice guys in Doomsong. And is all magic in Doomsong, as far as players go, and I guess NPCs to an extent too, going to be kind of clerical, where calling on the gods for powers rather than having it innate?
Yeah, so essentially there's kind of miracles and magic come from the traitor gods. Their domain is magic, essentially. They're the only ones who have any power beyond the physical rules of the world. That being said, the physical rules of the world are not quite the same as our world. So there are sort of some disciplines that are a bit like magic. So there's alchemy, for example, where the effects of alchemy can be creating substances that sort of burst into flames and create sort of napalmy like things, or sheathe weapons in flame and that sort of thing, or sort of balancing the humours to bring out sort of people's strengths and dampen their weaknesses and things. So you've got like this sort of potion-esque or magical thing, but in the rules of the world it's science. That is actually how the world works. It's not a magical effect, because all magic is the realm of witches, and all witches are tied to some traitor god. That's sort of how they get their magic. And what that means is that throughout the game, when you sort of see something and it breaks the laws of reality, you sort of know that it's in some way tied to the traitor gods. It might not be working for them, but it will be gifted power by them, or a creature of sort of a favoured creature by them, and that's sort of information that you can use in the game. So for example, the lace workers that I was mentioning earlier, they are creatures of Chance. So Chance basically loves lace workers. She's crazy for him, the Queen of Gilded Lace. And so essentially you know that sort of all lace workers in the world are, especially the magical ones, are sort of gifted those powers by Chance. And so if you're a witch of Chance, then you shouldn't really be killing them. They're beloved by your goddess. And if you're not a witch of Chance, then you sort of know that might piss Chance off if you end up sort of in a situation where that matters. So you've got this kind of twist and pull of, because everything magical is kind of tied to the traitor gods in some way. There are also sort of lesser dreads and sublimes, which aren't the traitor gods that you worship, but they're sort of offspring of those gods that have magical abilities. But everything sort of comes from that font that sort of leads up in this family tree that we've got, all the way to the immortal at the very top, who provides no miracles because they are dead.
So, we've discussed a little bit about the Greeblies and the Nasties and such that are inhabiting the world of Doomsong. How about some of the more nicer characters? Are there NPCs, and what kind of rules do you have for them that are spread out throughout the world of Doomsong?
So, yeah, NPCs are definitely varied in how useful or nice they are, ranging from like actually fairly like noble, which is always a dangerous thing to be in the realm of Leaf. Generally, sort of the more noble something is in this world, like the more tragic that setup is. So there's characters that have been cursed by the world, characters who sort of were around when the Plaguescape was created, and they might be noble or chivalrous or brave and good, but they've been warped in some way. Whether their essential nature has been changed or whether they are now just trapped in some way. So there's one character essentially who, due to the way the curse works, essentially couldn't be killed, but they are an enemy of Father Plague, and so their mind has been taken. Basically, their mind has been completely taken away from them. They've been driven mad, and so that sort of sets up this character who is on your side, but how useful they can be is definitely limited. We always want NPCs to be on the sidelines for whatever reason. So, sort of if an NPC is super powerful and on your side, then there's going to be some reason they're not going to be the limelight, because you're the main characters. You are the heroes. Might not be the right term, but you are the protagonists. So the main sort of hub of NPCs is in the guild hall that the Gravediggers sort of come from. Each player has a profession that they can choose. So, for example, there's the Rook is essentially the guild hall's master of birds, and so you can be the Rook as your character, and the Rook essentially has a load of quests throughout the Plaguescape. So you want to befriend the Valraven, collect pigeons, deal with the bird catchers, and that sort of thing. And every time you sort of tick off one of these quests, then you get new powers. And your powers are very mundane. It's all about sending messages throughout the Plaguescape with your pigeons, or leaving ravens to guard stuff and that sort of thing. But what that means is that that sort of isn't tied to your character. It's tied to the guild hall. So you don't necessarily need to be the one who is the Rook. You could have an NPC be your Rook, and you can sort of build up these characters within the guild hall, and because they're sort of mechanically helping you out, you grow to care about them.
Only for them to be ripped away, I'm sure.
This hub. Yeah. And so you've got this sort of hub of NPCs, which is sort of, we never say how many are there, because of course every time one of your characters die, you bring on a new character, and they come from the guild. So you've got this sort of, in game terms, infinite pool of people, but in the world it feels much more tenuous.
Fair enough. I can see Doomsong inspiring a lot of people to want to create, to be honest. It's so unique, it's so far out from the more popular TTRPGs, and it's a lot of fun. So are there any guidelines you'd have for people that want to create things to add on? Whether it's monsters or classes or anything else?
Yeah, so we have in our in the main book, we have sort of two sections that are basically built out about creating NPCs, creating monsters, and creating guilds. So essentially, the way character creation works is you go through all this path, and then at the very end of character creation, you join the guild. And in Lord Have Mercy Upon Us, that is the Gravediggers Guild. And so you join the Gravediggers Guild, you get some abilities for doing that, you get a pile of equipment to share amongst you, and you get all of this sort of gravediggery stuff. But in future adventures, or in adventures that you create in your own game, you might want to sort of have a different guild. You might be a guild of mercenaries, or a guild of witchfinders, or something along those lines. So we sort of give advice for creating your own guild, and how, what the important things are. How well equipped is this guild? You could have a guild of Templars that literally everyone gets plate armor and a greatsword, and suddenly your game is much less challenged by physical combat, but maybe there's other sort of challenges that come around. So there's guilds, and the important thing about Doomsong, or one of the important things, is that it's that guild story. So we create a lot of characterful stuff around our guild, the Gravediggers Guild in Leaf, and we really sort of push the GM, if they are creating their own guild, to do the same. Like, you should create this characterful thing. It shouldn't just be choosing a background in or a class. It should be this interwoven thing that's throughout the whole game. And the other sort of tools that we have are creating a monster, because in Doomsong there's tons of sort of bespoke monsters, and we have a formula isn't the right term, but we have a way of creating our monsters. Essentially, that action block, six abilities they can use that can be used in and out of combat, and then like their traits, their toughness and defense, and sort of this way of building an NPC that creates something that is mysterious to the players but unique to that monster. And once you're sort of down with that system of creation, you can honestly like do it fairly easily yourself. And so yeah, we definitely want people creating their own monsters.
Probably try and wrap this up a little bit now. With Doomsong coming out in 10 days from this recording on the 17th of October. Putting a deadline on it for you, buddy. What are your hopes and what are your plans for afterwards when you inevitably will succeed?
Well, so we've been spending the last few months essentially talking about Doomsong, and whilst we have been working on bits and pieces and refining stuff, it's definitely been about trying to get the word out. And so I'm honestly really excited to get back into the mines and to get back into the sort of the refining and finishing portion of the project. So once we get funding, then we can basically do that process, layout and finishing and getting everything basically sorted for printing, along with all the little sort of deluxe pieces that are available in the Kickstarter. So yeah, honestly, it's going to be a lot of work, but it's going to be a lot of different type of work, which is definitely something that we very much enjoy. That creative and sort of nose to the grindstone bit of the work. So yeah, very much looking forward to that. Once we have created Doomsong, once that's off with the printers, then depending on the success, because we do still do a fair amount of freelance work and service work for other companies, which if anyone's interested in hiring Caesar Inc., they certainly can. Go check us out at caesar.inc. And basically, there is much more of Doomsong planned. New campaigns to explore, new regions, new areas of Paynim, and we are looking forward to just tearing apart this world, really, really destroying it, and bringing forth that apocalypse. Because, as you may know, Pestilence is one of the horsemen of the apocalypse, first horseman of the apocalypse. And there are more to come.
Well, obviously Doomsong's not fully out yet, but having seen the demo, we are super excited to see how this goes. We experience a full game and whatever else in the universe that you come up with.
And yeah, very much looking forward to bringing it out.
Yes, well, thank you very much for your time, Jack. I would say if there's anywhere that people can find you, but you did already plug your thing in.
Yeah.
But I suppose if there is anyone that does want to hire Caesar Inc., well, go to their website. Jack, is there anywhere people can find you specifically?
Honestly, best way at the moment is on the Kickstarter. So if you find the Kickstarter, search Doomsong into Google, and we're pretty high up there on the SEO. That is the best way to find us and what we're doing at the moment. We're also on Twitter under Caesar Inc. at Caesar Inc. So find us there and you can give us a prod, give us a chat, and look forward to hearing from you.
Ooh. Links will be in the description below. Thank you very much for your time. This has been a Pint of Cthulhu with Jack from Caesar Inc. and we are signing off.